The modern world is killing our nervous system. Modern life is terrible for our mental health. The information economy is damaging our central nervous system. If this is at all interesting, if this resonates, if this is something you've been thinking about, maybe you feel intuitively, this video is for you. Let's jump right in. I want to ground our discussion in academic literature. This isn't just conjecture, people. This is a channel on philosophy. And we have several books to help guide and frame our discussion today. The first is a great book called Digital Minimalism, written by Cal Newport. I'm going to drop links to all of these in the video description. The second book, and the most important book, and I encourage all of you to read this book. You should read both of these books. This is, if you're going to read one of them, this is the book to read. Stolen Focus by Jonathan Hari. So this book dives into what's called the information economy. And we talk a lot about these things called neurotransmitters. We're going to talk about neurotransmitters today because, folks, understanding what neurotransmitters are is key to understanding how the modern world is damaging our mental health. So let's jump right in. Folks, I'm going to try to do this video in about 5 minutes or less. You all know there's not a ton of editing going on. I'm basically doing this off the cuff. So I'm going to try to keep this as brief and as succinct as I can. We have this concept of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemicals in our brain which regulate things. Things like our mood. Things like whether or not we feel happy, things like whether or not we feel engaged, our feeling of sense, our feelings, our sense of self-worth. All of this is predicated on these things called neurotransmitters. It's the chemical basis for our personalities and how we feel. There's a very famous neurotransmitter. There's several key neurotransmitters, but there's a very famous neurotransmitter, and it's called dopamine. And there's a lot of misconceptions around what dopamine is and the role dopamine plays. It's not just the pleasure chemical. A lot of people incorrectly assume that dopamine is just the pleasure chemical. Broadly speaking, there's an element of truth in that. Dopamine is associated with pleasure, but dopamine fundamentally is the brain's reward mechanism, right? Not necessarily pleasure, reward. So every time you've got a to-do list and you check something off that list, you get a hit of dopamine. Every time you see a friend, you're walking down the street, you give them a fist bump, a high five, you get a hit of dopamine. Every time you watch porn, you get a hit of dopamine. Every time you're intimate with another human being, you get a hit of dopamine. Every time you go shopping, you get a hit of dopamine. Every time you gamble, you get a hit of dopamine. Every time you get on social media, you get a hit of dopamine. Are you all with me so far? Dopamine is the brain's reward mechanism. I said we do this video in 5 minutes or less. I think we might need a couple minutes. I might go a little bit over, folks, but hopefully you all find this valuable. Dopamine is the brain's reward mechanism. And scientists figured this out in the mid-2000s, right around the time Facebook and social media platforms were starting to take off. Researchers down at Stanford, predominantly, most of the big prominent academic universities in the United States were all doing kind of comparable research. But it was really down there at Stanford where key advances in psychology, behavioral economics, all of these were taking place right around the mid to late 2000s, right as Facebook was starting to hit that inflection point. And the premise was, how do we keep these platforms engaging? Nobody says addictive, right? How do we keep people addicted, eyeballs on screen? Nobody's going to say that. They say, how do we keep people engaged on these platforms? How do we maximize eyeballs on screen? Dopamine. Dopamine is how we maximize eyeballs on screen. And the corporate powers in the United States and in the world, and then, it started in the Western world, China and Asia, the cat's out of the bag, business practices, specifically in and around technology, were adopted in the past 5-10 years by other companies that are no longer based in the United States. TikTok is the perfect example here, everybody. TikTok took Facebook's business model. They took the science and the understanding of an infinite scroll. How do we maximize engagement? How do we use the algorithm to algorithmically disseminate information algorithmically to maximize engagement? So the folks at TikTok, some of the smartest people in the world, figured this out. And TikTok built a business model very, very, very similar to Facebook's. In fact, you could argue that TikTok and ByteDance's business model is even more effective than Facebook's. They weaponized the short form video. They figured it out. They figured out that the human attention span in aggregate had been reduced to 7 or 8 seconds. So I threw a ton at you all, but I just want to recap. There's this concept of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters in our brain are very, very, very important. They regulate our mood, our sense of self, how we see the world. And if you can subtly manipulate some of these neurotransmitters, if you understand how some of these neurotransmitters work, you can modulate behavior. You can shape human behavior, not in a conspiratorial, reptile people running the world kind of sense. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I want to put that out here on this channel. But if you can control neurotransmitters, you can shape human behavior. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the world today. We're seeing a subtle shaping of human behavior through neurotransmitters, through the algorithm, through the selective dissemination of information. In our next video, eventually we're going to talk about the outrage economy. And just as a little bit of a teaser, folks, for what the outrage economy is in a nutshell, when we get outraged for whatever reason, this is going to sound kind of crazy, you get that hit of dopamine. I know. Isn't that weird? Evolutionary biology is kind of interesting, but when you get mad, you know that feeling, folks? You get mad. You know that feeling where there's that certainty in your anger. That's where the outrage economy comes in. And the same neurotransmitters are at play when we're pissed off. Because when we're enraged, we're engaged. I'm going to say that one more time. When we're enraged, we're engaged. So for all those reasons and more, people, that's why the modern world is killing our mental health. That's why the information economy is terrible for our central nervous system. I hope you found this video valuable, entertaining, if nothing else. Folks, I'm trying to grow this channel. I could very much use your support. Let me know your thoughts, though, in the comments. Could use a like, could use a subscribe. Hope you found this video valuable, entertaining, if nothing else, and I will see you all on the next one. Take care. Stop scrolling.